And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We do this every Thursday, 12 noon Eastern Time here on Talkradio.nyc. So, Hope, we just started to get into your background a little bit. So, in 76, you went with your mom to Findhorn to experience the amazing garden. You say that's when you had your spiritual awakening. What happened to you there?
Well, up until that point, I had a pretty logical mind, and I would say the logical part of me also continued on, but I didn't realize until I was at Findhorn that it was actually barring me from fully experiencing a spirituality that doesn't make logical sense. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And the energy at Findhorn was so huge and profound that every day in our classes, you could see almost like another soldier falling. You know, everybody would go, "Okay, I can't take it anymore." You know, and they'd open to the energy, and it took me 3 days, and then it just like cork popped out of my head, and I went, "Oh my gosh, I see now what I've been missing. I've had understanding of certain things, but you know the famous Buddha quote, "The longest distance is from the head to the heart."
Yes.
And it's that. Now I wouldn't say that was where I was then, and that was a huge leap, and that started a whole trajectory of learning and education that carried on very quietly, very under wraps, because of course it wasn't fully safe. For decades. And I like to think of enlightenment as I understand it now as not a destination that you arrive to and suddenly, you understand all. I tend to think of it as a series of enlightenments, a series of understandings that you've been in a glass box and shattering that, and then you go on and you grow to the next box. Yeah. And you always think you're done with boxes, but but no, you're not really.
You got some thumbs up on that one.
Yeah. So that keeps us humble, right?
Right.
But I progressed along for many years, and then we moved to the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, and I had another series of glass box breaking. And then in 2010, which is sort of bringing us up to the last...
Just one quick question first. When did you kind of go public about this stuff? Because as you said, you kept it kind of under wraps for a long time. When did you finally come out as this healer?
After 2010.
Oh, after 2010? Oh, okay. So it wasn't until... Okay, go ahead.
No. So I would do things, and I read tons of books. I took different seminars and classes here and there as I could because I was raising a family. But in 2010, I had a very challenging year, very, very hard year. Family eruptions and very dramatic things happened, requiring a great deal of my time and energy. And by September, I realized that all my tanks, mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, were on dead low. And I knew if I don't get some healing, I'm going to get sick. That's just what happens.
Right, absolutely.
So I went out to the Pacific Northwest to Tom Kenyon. And he had 2 back-to-back sound healing workshops, which he has never done before and never had done since. I mean, this was very special that this happened. So I went out and I had these, and my goal going into them was to, I always say, wipe my inner bowl clean. Get out all the detritus and really remove stories, lineages, this lifetime in particular. I wanted to be empty of all of that. And I didn't exactly know why, but I was on a warriorous path with this. I was so dedicated to it. So I went in and I had what I now would call a shamanic initiation.
Oh, really?
Through this whole time. I didn't know, I wouldn't have called it that at the time.
But now with the perspective.
Yes, exactly. And on the very last practice of the very last day, I had had so many changes, so many aspects of me burned and gone away beautifully. And I had one last question, which was to understand sort of the overarching reason for this very dramatic year that I'd had. You know, I got my answer, and I was so filled with gratitude and awe at how it had all worked out and how I had participated in setting it up, that I internally said, I am a willing vessel, do with me what you will, out of my gratitude and my surrender to this huge truth that I had just come to understand. And so I came home delightfully empty for 3 days. And on the third day, I had a series of 3 visions. Now, I wasn't in the habit of having visions, especially walking around in my living room. You know?
In broad daylight.
In broad daylight with my eyes open. No, that didn't exactly happen to me every day. I had had a lot of psychic experiences and things that had happened. But, you know, this was definitely a different situation. Now, I will say that I had developed a pretty strong dowsing practice up to that point. Now, when I talk about dowsing, I'm talking about, you know, one can use a pendulum or one can use dowsing rods, L rods they're called, or any other, there are other dowsing tools. And I had become familiar with what I call dowsing rods, or what is known as dowsing rods. And they had really directed us to do some things that were not totally logical, but we were strongly urged to do so. For instance, moving to Massachusetts, even though my husband worked in Connecticut, and things that people would scratch their heads and did. I know they did. They thought I was nuts. And, you know, but they said, no, you have to go, and you have to go in the spring of 2006. And they were insistent and what day to put my house on the market, what price to put it at. I mean, no, very, very specific. And so I was not in the habit of saying no at that point, even. And this was a very risky thing. It turned out to be, we sold the house at the very top of that real estate bubble. It literally started to fall the next week.
Oh my God!
And then here we were in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. We didn't know where we were going to live. We had a very interesting situation. Anyway, eventually we were able to buy a property and build the dream house, which was for me a greenhouse, meaning eco house. Right. And I was able to do everything that I had wanted to do for years in terms of building a healthy and a ecologically conscious home.
Right.
And so we did that, and we moved in 2009, and then the next year had this difficult year. Well, I had dowsed all of these things all along the way. So I was used to working with my guide team. By that point, I had started to have dowsing clients. And so that was a little toe out of the closet. But I wasn't fully out. So let's catch up now. So I have these visions. So I have this giant wall of water. And it's hundreds of stories high. It's quite beautiful. It's turquoise. And it doesn't feel threatening. And there's a byline that goes with it. And it said, this wave represents a push of evolution that is coming to the planet. If you choose to resist it, life is going to be harder for you. If you choose to swim or surf with this wave, then your personal evolution, your spiritual evolution will go much more smoothly. End of that vision. Next vision. It's a cross-section of the wave from the sideways. So, you know, when you see a curling wave that shows a surfer you know, thing. So the byline that went with this was, as the wave pulls away from the shore and deepens into the seabed to get its power, its energy to create the cresting wave, right? So you should leave everything you know, all our knowingness, on the shore.
Sure. Okay.
Go to the energy of the earth and the wisdom keepers of the earth, the ancient ones, the Aboriginals, the Celtic, the various teachers,
Right.
and the earth itself, and take that wisdom and mix it with this incoming push of evolution.
Okay.
And then, instead of this letter C that the wave was making in its crest, just kind of falling down in the water, it curled around and turned into this standing figure eight made of flowing water. And there was no byline. And it hung out in front of my vision like this for about 3 days.
Wow. Oh my God. Did you think you were going crazy?
Yes.
I mean, I just know, like, if that happened to me, I mean, I'd be, like, enthralled, but I'd be, like, questioning myself, like, do I need to check myself into a hospital?
That's exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
And so on the third day, I sat down with my dowsing rods, and fortunately, I've worked with them in such a way for so many years that yes and no questions are not the only way I can go with it.
Oh, okay.
And I realize that I get nudges, and how to ask things. And
Right.
so I sat down with my rods and I said, what is up with this? And eventually what came out was that this figure eight had a name. It was called the infinity wave.
Okay.
That it is an energetic, it's a living energetic. It is a 10th dimensional energy that is love and compassion at a very distilled level. So this is way above the energy of our emotional abilities to feel love and compassion. It's very distilled.
Okay.
And that's inherent in the water. And the purpose of this was to help us in our evolution.
Okay.
So that's all I knew. And then they told me that I had to create workshops about this. And I said, no.
About what?
Exactly.
About watery figure eight?
What the heck, you know? And then they subtly but kindly reminded me that I had declared myself a willing vessel. So I always say, be careful what you ask for.
All right, great. Let's hold it there. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, let's get into what the infinity wave really is all about, how people can use it, and how you've worked with it to help people in their lives, okay?
Sure.
Wonderful, Hope. So everybody, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. And if anyone wants to call in and ask a question, our call-in number is 877-480-4120, or on our Facebook live stream. If you go to facebook.com/Talking Alternative, you can put a comment in the Facebook live stream, and we'll talk about your comments. So everybody, please stay tuned. We'll be right back.